You're listening to Mad Radio. Mad Radio. Mad Radio. Make a difference.
Quick, me lads! Hoist the rigging!
Aye, Captain!
Splice the main brace!
Aye, Captain!
Batten down the hatches!
Aye, Captain!
I'm going below deck to get the show started. And now, the man with high energy and low intelligence, it's Mr. Look at me, himself, Brandon McCarty.
Well, thank you, Petey. Hey, welcome in, all you scallywags, you swashbucklers, landlubbers, hornswogglers, and salty dogs, to the Peg Leg Podcast, a show where we delve into the lives of fellow pirates and learn a bit more about the unsung heroes among us all. This week we travel to the School of Behavioral and Social Sciences to speak to an individual who was an MJC alum. That's right, they got their Associates of Arts degree in Social Sciences. They went on to UC Davis to get their BA in Geography and Chinese History. From there, they went to UOP for a single subject credential in social studies. From there, they went to the London School of Economics, where they picked up their master's in Third World Economic History and Geography. She began teaching part-time at MJC in 1986 and was hired full-time in 1997. She is the first full-time geography instructor at MJC, authoring 6 new courses to create a comprehensive program. She is a local Houston kid. She raised 2 bright and beautiful daughters. She coached many sports over the years to include soccer, basketball, track, and volleyball. She is a past BBSS Division Dean and a founding member of the Houston Historical Society. She values win-win situations, which allows groups to work together and find common ground. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the poop deck, geography instructor Cece Hudelson.
Hi, everyone. Arg.
Arg. So, well, you've been at the college for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And we've both have seen a lot of...
This is my 27th year full-time. But I started part-time in 1986 right after receiving my credential. I taught as an adjunct in ESL.
Really?
As my credential had some ESL components. And then as soon as I had my master's, I started teaching geography and history.
So how did you find your way then to MJC?
So it's kind of a fun story. I'm the 5th of 5 kids. So I had no choice. I knew where my direction was. My parents met each other at MJC, had a little love story of MJC. My dad had been the sophomore class president, and my mom was the secretary for the freshman class.
Okay.
Student council. And so since they very much enjoyed MJC, then all 5 of us were forced to go to MJC. I always start off the first day of class with students. How many of you want to be here?
How many hands do you actually get to go up?
A couple.
I
said, well, I was like you. I did not want to come to MJC, but clearly I didn't destroy my life and stay in a place I hated. I loved MJC,
right.
And I found great people who really spoke energy and fun into my life and gave me direction, and so that I wanted to come back to MJC and do the same. So
excellent.
Life sentence at MJC.
So kind of go through the process of what led you to start teaching and how you got your position at the college.
When I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a neonatal nurse. I liked first aid. I liked biology. Very much thought I'd go into healthcare. I worked as a candy striper. And then I was a avid basketball player throughout my high school years, and doing a lot of coaching clinics. I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed teasing kids, and just seemed natural. And I worked in a lot of elementary school settings and things like that. So my senior year, I decided I would be a teacher. And a lot of kids at Hughson High, amazingly, could not read and write when they graduated from high school. A couple of my really good friends. So I decided I wanted to teach first grade, where I could really teach kids how to write. My grandmother had been a teacher in Salida School District I'm going to age myself here, in the 1920s, I believe. And so when she wanted to get married, she had to quit teaching. She encouraged me at that time that I should probably think about third grade, that they could actually do some things in third grade. But I still went to my counseling session at MJC. As you registered back in the 80s, you had to meet with a counselor first. And I had a person who was my counselor, who kind of pigeonholed me into being a elementary teacher. And then at the time, as I went through other classes, I was challenged. I fell in love with earth science. I had Don Aarons as the earth science teacher. It was really fun and intense at the same time. I loved history. I took also a great poli-sci class from Dick Higginbotham. I had anthropology from Roberta Linkett. And all those things kind of came together. And so when I first took my first cultural geography class, it blended all of that together. It was history, but also earth science, how humans adapt to the earth. That's really what geographers do. And I'm a farm kid, so it looked at agriculture from a critical viewpoint. So my father enjoyed that I could be a smart ass and ask him about how his sustainability was.
Right.
And I continue on with that with my brothers who farm. They don't really enjoy that too much, but I try to push them to more sustainable practices. And so it just seemed kind of a natural fit. I often tell my kids and my students, I really fell in love with geography when I was 19. And my dad didn't think that was such a great major. I would tell him I wasn't, history majors, there's probably 5,000 history majors at every UC, seems. And so geographers were much smaller. At UC Davis, I think there were 45 majors. So you really did get hands-on help from individuals at UC Davis. And then I guess part of that as well is when I was at UC Davis, I was really focused on cultural geography. I like to see how people adopt their culture, or how they're enculturated by their family. In small towns around this area, there's a lot of crazy things that happen in terms of once I tried to ditch high school, and I was pulled over on the way to the donut shop in Ceres by the CHP, who knew my father and escorted me back to high school with full lights. And so when I got back home, my dad said, "Gonna do that again?" And that's when I knew I lived in a small community, that that person taught. And this is before cell phones, right? So I love that process of enculturation here in the Central Valley with Assyrian culture, Portuguese culture, Italian culture, Hispanic culture. It was really fun in classrooms to share that type of discussion with my classmates. And we did that in junior high and high school quite a bit. And so that's kind of the direction I was going in my undergrad, was mostly cultural geography. And we call that cultural ecology, where you look at how humans affect the earth. And now, sadly, that's kind of become environmental studies, and everyone jumped across away from geography. But that's kind of our own fault, I would argue. In the 90s, the geography departments didn't become proactive and say, we are environmental studies. But that's kind of my undergraduate focus. When I went to grad school, then I became more economic in focus. Looking at my first degree in third world development is looking at sustainable agriculture and how World Bank policies affect sustainability. It's kind of a heady concept. And then my second thesis I did in geography was looking at the small nut companies here and how they developed and why they developed here. And being a farm kid, it was really helpful because I knew at least 30 people who created their own nut companies. So very enjoyable in terms of seeing its application to local economic development, to trying to improve our community here in the Central Valley. As I wind down my career, that's I think the biggest hurdle I'm having is trying to understand whether I made a difference in 30 years of investing in my community. I think I have, but there's so much more that we could do to make Stanislaus County a vibrant community. And I think that the students are still top-notch. We just need to invest in them and recognize that they may be more naive and than other communities. Really may not know much about education as a whole when they walk into our classes. Like the Bay Area kids were always a lot more savvy about education and its role in their lives. But I think most kids are like sponges here, and if you can provide energy and inspiration, that's what I obtained at MJC as a student. People invested their energy in me and allowed me to see that I could excel in something I really loved.
Well, if they would just put the cell phones down for a few minutes, maybe they could learn something.
I actually, I've been teaching for 4 decades. Hard to say that, but it is true. And this generation, Generation Z, for me, I find them the most open-minded generation I've ever taught. And the cell phone has given them power, which I love because I'm a smartass deep down. And I like a kid to challenge me in class and go, wait a minute, really? This says
That's
this.
not what I read.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, what side are you on? Let's go and see. Anybody find anything different? And I love that kind of interaction and being able to not be frightened of their, I think it's normal for a 19-year-old to be a little sassy.
Oh, yes.
And question authority. Mm-hmm. I want that. And so I like, there's so many apps, at least that are geography based, that I can find. If they're really on their phones all the time, then I take that next evening to say, oh, is there an app I can use? Like an app on elevation, and we could see where flooding will take place. Or there's of course, there's USGS has their quake app. And so it's usually free for them. There's a great app called Windy, where it can show you where the wind hits and you can watch the direction, and then we can talk about what's causing that. And the more I can get them to play with those apps, the more they're going to learn. And what I like about it too is this app annoys them at all times of the week when I'm not even in their presence. Sunday morning at 6 a.m. there was a quake in Guam, and my students get notified.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway.
So you grew up in Houston, right? Mm-hmm. So how was that? You said it's kind of.
So I am a 6th generation Hughsonite.
Whoa!
So my family was the first family that settled in Houston in 1853, and I often questioned their wisdom in settling in Houston. But Houston is a great place. It was a small community when I was a kid, 2,000 people.
You're not still on the property that was.
No, I feel that would be a little incestuous if I lived in Houston. Right. So no, I live in Turlock. It gives me a little distance and anonymity, which I prefer. But it's grown to about 6,000 now, and still it's the type of community that everyone knows everyone. My kids ended up being the 7th generation, as well as some of my nephews and nieces going to Houston High School. So Houston, when I was part of the first group, and Brian Sinclair as well, that started the Houston Historical Society, and I think I was in my 30s during that time. And the fun part of that, I would get to the meetings, and I must have been the youngest person by 40 years. And all these old timers of Houston would just tease me unmercifully because they remember me at 3 or 4.
Oh. Right.
And, and I'm like, I am kind of a smart aleck, people, so just beware. So it was really, and one of my favorite questions to them, it still has not been answered by many of them. One of my favorite pastimes, I guess you'll know me a little bit too much from this interview, is in high school we used to toilet paper each other. And when you're out in the country and there's not a whole lot to do, it was enjoyable. And so when we all first got our licenses, we would toilet paper everybody's house. And you're out in the country, there's no police.
Oh, wow.
I would often be woken up at 6 a.m. by my father and get up, it's time to clean up the toilet paper. And I loved that. It was just such a fun summer, couple summers doing that. And so one of my favorite questions to the old timers when we're at some of the meetings is, what did they do for fun when they were teenagers? And they all will say to me, "Oh, I don't remember."
Yeah, right. We went frog gigging.
But I did have our pharmacist in downtown Houston was willing to admit a few months ago that they used to take the outhouses. He grew up in the 50s, so in high school. So they'd take the outhouses and put them like in the center of town. and the sheriff would often come to his house. I said, he's lucky it's not zero tolerance these days.
Oh,
he would have been in prison.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Houston, small towns can be very limiting, can be very, for a lot of people, everyone knows each other's business.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it can also be very supportive. And kids are looked out for. I always understood Hillary Clinton's idea of it takes a village to raise kids, because often parents would come alongside and direct kids back in the flow if they had gotten off on bad starts, So that's the nice part about Houston. I also think when you go to a K-12 where, and this is typical at this area at the time, that maybe 10% of us went to college, but we had gone from kindergarten through 12th grade together. And we all loved each other and knew each other.
Sure.
And so you value each other no matter what education level they're at, or you understand family dynamics and how it can affect kids. And I just had my 40th reunion last year. And the affection you have for someone that you've known your entire life and that they know you is nice. Because here at MJC, people see me more academic. But if you ask all the Houston people who know me, oh, she's a basketball player. That's all I do.
Very cool.
So it's fun to see that depth that you get from small towns.
Well, what are some of your hobbies outside of work?
I think right now in my life, my hobbies are mostly travel. I'm really trying to make up for all the travel I didn't do while raising kids. And I try to be pretty physically active. I'm a golfer. I try to golf, as we all say. Hike a lot. I used to garden a lot. It's kind of, COVID's changed a lot of, I think, our behavior and activities. So right now I'm trying to get back in to the fold of humanity and go back to yoga classes and things like that. So it's a lot of physical activity that I like to do. Trying to see how healthy we can be as moving into 60s or a couple of years away, and see if I can still be athletic during
Of course. Yes. That's funny you mentioned that. I got passed up. I was doing Mount Whitney one year, and I got passed up by this couple that were in their 80s.
Wow.
Who they do this every week.
That's motivational.
Yes.
Oh, so another thing, because this is part of your questions as well. So since COVID, we're working from home, all faculty. So I was really bored. I have an empty nest, my kids were both away at college. And so what I started doing was going to Eagles concerts. I went with one of my girlfriends I grew up with Sherry Lima from the library. And so I said, hey, do you want to go to Eagles concert with me? This is pre-COVID. We were in Vegas, and we went downstairs at 7:30, and we came back to the room at 1. And the Eagles played for 4 hours. And they're in their 70s.
Really?
They were in their 70s.
Wow.
So that's my motivation, is to find older people that are still so passionate and motivated and still doing what they love. So from that time, as soon as COVID kind of broke protocols, I went to all across the country with different girlfriends. I had a girlfriend who was my roommate in London. She's Colombian. She was living in D.C., so we saw the Eagles there. I went to Atlanta with a different friend, went to Austin with a different friend. So I think I'm their Where's Waldo. That's me in their concerts. Where's Cece? Oh, there she is.
Well, I'm hoping that that's going to be one of the choices that you choose for the 3 albums. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. What is something that you pride yourself in?
So I saw this question. I have a hard time with that word pride because I think especially even as you age, you try to be less and less ego. I do, and less pride.
Right.
So what I do hope that I offer, let's say in my job, but even in my life as a whole, is just to be a caring, energetic person. That I really try to meet people where they're at and serve them wherever I can, however they can. And being at MJC for so long in my life, my job descriptions have changed so much that it's just being present and offering whatever knowledge and wisdom and energy. I want to, really, it's got to be fun or people aren't going to do it. And, I wouldn't have been an academic if I didn't find it fun, if I felt it, painful and drudgery, sit at this desk and read this. I would have never done it. It was that it was playful and we could talk to other people and, ask them what they think about Marxism or, very fun. So that is the main thing I pride myself in, is just finding playfulness and energy in whatever circumstance takes place. I was in my mid-50s when COVID hit. I've always done online from the time I was in my 20s, as soon as it came around, even when we did telecourses back in the day.
I remember those,
And
yes.
so I said, okay, here's another challenge. So what can I learn by being home and online? And even this last couple weeks, because after you kind of break for a while from the semester, it's like, okay, I need to kick it up again in my online classes. What new things can I do that aren't going to be difficult for students to do, but can make it more interactive and it can be more playful in class? And if I'm not doing that each semester, then I don't think I'm bringing my best. And so that is kind of the thing that I do pride myself with, and is when you teach the same 2 or 3 or 4 classes your entire life for over 40 years, it's hard to find the happy playfulness in it in a simple manner. But that is a challenge that each of us as faculty have to find. And that's, I guess, what I'm the proudest of, that I found my joy in teaching those courses again.
Well, you may have already answered it, but what motivates you? Is it the same kinds of things then?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, as I said about why I became a teacher, I also think, when you have kids, you start to see how certain brains are inherited. I have engineering in my family. My grandfather was an engineer. I have a brother who's an engineer, and one of my daughters is an engineer. And economics and geography also runs through our family. My father, even though a farmer, loved economics. And in my 20s, we would get into so many fights at his house about our different perspectives on economics. I really enjoyed that. I think he did too at the end of the day, but it was pretty heated at times. And so that motivation I had just to find who I truly was as a teacher. I've always been a teacher. If I go take yoga, I'm going to teach you the great things I learned about yoga or meditation. But it's also those friends that I've had lifelong that cannot read and write and went K-12. They've had very difficult lives. And that's my motivation each day, is to think, okay, I want to help those kids who really need that break. And at times, within MJC, I still have kids write a 5-paragraph essay. And sometimes I get some harassment from some other faculty. And I'm sorry, but the world is about writing. And if I'm going to empower those people to have better lives, they need to be able to learn how to write. So I come alongside and I try to offer help. And they can do that through geography. I can teach them how to write using geography. And so that's what motivates me is those people are still in my lives, those people that are some of my best friends in basketball that, have had to be receptionists and things that are verbal because they can't write. Very limiting.
What do you like about the MJC community as a whole?
Wow. We've had a tough 20 years at MJC. But what I do love about MJC is this idea that we have local experts that come in and inspire students. That's an amazing thing. I also love that we work at this institution for 20, 30 years, and we can be there for each other as a support network. MJC also, that I talk about a lot in urban geography, MJC has a unique situation that we could affect Modesto, and we're in the downtown, and we should be the cultural center of downtown. And I love how free Modesto is to engage in that manner, that if we really wanted to take on those tasks, we can do that. And for a long time, MJC was the cultural center, right? We were the theater for the entire community. But I still see that today. And you can see that with various faculty that are out and involved in the downtown, that it makes a big difference. So that's the part I think I love the most about MJC is, well, and this goes to our structure as well. I love shared governance. I love this idea that you come to work as a faculty member and you teach your classes, and then in the afternoon you go to committee work and you get to affect your institution, and the management get to understand from a faculty and staff perspective what students' needs are. That freedom of the give and take is a great part of the community college structure.
I love that answer. That was awesome. Where are some of your favorite places to eat?
So it's interesting because I like a lot of, it's going to sound cheesy, but I like a lot of downtown Modesto restaurants, like Church Key's a kind of fun new place that I enjoy.
You've had their cauliflower bites, right?
Yeah, very much. But even some of their bowls are pretty exceptional. So also I like going to downtown restaurants to support the downtown, but I also like a good Panera whenever possible.
Okay.
I've been kind of guilty in this way of using my DoorDash or Uber Eats at times. I did spend this last semester, I had met all my requirements for teaching live, and I put my resume on Indeed looking for summer, maybe someplace I could retire and see what their summer school is like. And George Washington University picked me up. And my daughter lives in D.C. So thankfully, with our contract and also my boss, Curtis Martin, I was able to go live in Alexandria for 5 months while I taught 2 courses at George Washington.
Wow.
And so when I'm thinking food, I'm thinking much more of that environment. It was, very urban. So downstairs, I have one of the best Thai restaurants nearby and that type of thing.
Interesting.
They have, there's this great restaurant, kind of silly for breakfast, Toastique, that had avocado toast of everything you can imagine on avocado toast. So, the Central Valley is very different from that. So I think I'm more of an urban eater. So.
Well, hopefully we get some more choices, I guess.
Yeah. There is a new corn dog. I'm looking forward to this. So in Turlock, there's a Korean corn dog restaurant that's coming up where they put all kinds of fun things in the batter. So Google that if you haven't yet.
Korean corn dog.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
In Turlock.
In Turlock.
I'll have to check that out.
We've got a big university there, so you've got at least 8,000 kids that could eat things.
If you would, tell us a funny story or experience that you've had either personally or professionally.
Well, I have an endearing story. I taught 7th grade at Somerset for a year after graduate school. And I had these 7th grade boys who did not want to do anything. And
As they normally
Yes.
are.
But I would just not ignore them. I would go along and try to encourage them to complete their work. And so one of those boys used to say to me, if I'm homeless when I'm older, will you give me money? I said, no, I've invested a year of my life into you. I'm not going to do that. And so I was 24 at the time. And what was really fun is the last day of school, I had them make a cover of Time magazine and why they would make the cover. And this one person, who's now an actor, I won't mention him, but I've been seeing him on things. He put his little thing, he was in jail. I said, what are you in jail for? To kill Miss Hudelson. It's like,
Wow.
This is before zero tolerance, where
Yes.
it could be playful. It was all playful. And so what has been enjoyable throughout my life is I went away after that and I taught at Foothill College for 5 years. And so then I came back to Modesto in the 90s, late 90s. And every one of those 4 boys who failed 7th grade have come through my classes to prove to me that they're intelligent and smart. And of course, they'd say, I just had to show you I was smart. I go, I always knew you were smart.
Yes, you had to prove it to yourself, not me.
So, that's been very enjoyable. It's very fulfilling in that way. I think the fun, most playful stuff I've done in the last 20 years was probably coaching soccer and things like that with my girls. When my girls went to Denair, and then Denair School District lost accreditation. So we moved them to Hughson. So when we came back to Hughson, since I had been an athlete there, everyone's like, you're coaching track with us. And so my youngest and I would challenge each other up the incline of the high school football field. And in 6th grade, I beat her. I think I was 40. I was proud of that.
Yes.
And then by 8th grade, she whooped me. Thought I was going to have a heart attack by the end. But those kinds of things, those are just the fun part.
Would you at least give us the initials of the person who went on to act?
DG.
DG. Okay. We'll have...
He's not big yet. Here, I'll say, is Donnie Gonzalez.
Okay.
He made a Modesto Bee article a couple of years ago, and he's doing a lot of work in Hollywood just as an extra.
Well, we'll have to watch his rise there, too.
Yeah.
Interesting. Who has been your biggest influence, either personally or professionally or both?
I think there's various people at various times. And I think the most long-standing person that affected me the most academically and in my job was Dick Higginbotham. I had Dick Higginbotham when I was at MJC for poli-sci and just absorbed everything that he taught about. It was during the Cold War, which was Dick's love and passion for Cold War. And then he always encouraged me when I came back from Davis and stopped through and see people. And you've got to teach, you got to get back in here. And so when I came back full time, they gave me the office right next to Dick. And I lost my dad before I came back. And so Dick was very much almost like a substitute father to me very much throughout the whole time. But his guidance and direction and getting me to participate more fully in the college was strategic to my whole experience at MJC. Yeah, I learned a lot about unions from him. I learned a lot about grievances and grievance process, which I was the grievance officer for about 6 years. And I really learned from him as well, just how to give people grace and understanding throughout their 30-year career at MJC. And sadly, Dick was in a bicycle accident after he retired, and he died a few years after that. And so I see Randy Siefkin in a similar manner. But so it's those people who really gave their all to MJC and the community college, and really made it dynamic. You know, you left, I personally as a student, I know a lot of other people as well, left ready to go at a UC. We were ready. And so even though you felt like I felt at times, friends who went to a 4-year school would make fun that we were going to the high school with ashtrays and all that kind of silly stuff about making fun of MJC. But we were ready to go. And whereas I could have perhaps gotten into a CSU as out of high school, there's no way I could have gotten into a UC. And so to be able to leave MJC and excel at UCs, that was really our challenge. And I know most of my classmates from Hughson, but also from MJC, we all have felt that. And we saw just how significant the people like Dick and Randy Siefkin and the Linketts were, Don Ahrens, set the bar for us. And even Don Ahrens, in terms of writing his textbook on meteorology, he had the top text in the nation in meteorology. And so you can see with these faculty members that just how amazing and dynamic MJC's faculty were. And I think they still are. When I became the dean, it was such a joy to go into people's classes and see that they set the bar very high and gave support. And it was, you know, it was just encouraging to me that we're still doing the right thing day by day. We've had great administrators around here. One of the great administrators for me that I truly learned from was Steve Collins. He always came alongside in his various retirement obligations.
Who I'm still trying to get on the podcast.
Yeah. But he is Mr. MJC. He's good. And then also Stan Hodges. And Stan really supported me and gave me good direction and insights as I rose to be an administrator as a whole. We have so many people in our community still that have been past administrators, past faculty. There's just this wealth of love out there. And you can see it in the board meetings right now and the care in the community about our direction. And that's unusual. You don't find that in other communities for the college. Maybe Columbia, you know, they love their college in Columbia region too. And so you see that same sense of passion and responsibility for that college, their community.
If you had a free plane ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Traveling a lot lately, so that's kind of hard.
Your dream trip.
Yeah, my dream trip, I think, would be Italy. I was all set up to go to Italy right when COVID happened. I was on a semester sabbatical, and Italy was shut down 1 week before I got to Venice. So I grew up in Hughson, and Hughson's an Italian community. And my neighbor was Araldo Chiesa, and he was from a little town outside of Genoa. And so the stories I grew up with that I loved, you know, are all about Italy. And so some of the friends I have from high school, they say the whole town of, you know, this little town outside of Genoa all moved en masse to Hughson. And so they're all related, all the Kazazes and Chiesas and Bulgaris. And I would very much love to be in that environment and see where they all came from, you know. But I'll get there eventually. I'm on the eyes. This is what I'm one to create bucket lists. I'm not going to hit 60 or 70 and not obtain everything I think I've wanted to.
You said you're on the eyes.
So I still want to see Iceland as
Okay.
a geographer as well, but I also want to see the Northern Lights. I think that would be really enjoyable. I haven't been to Ireland yet, so I need to go to Ireland.
Yes.
And then Italy. So yes, I'm on the eyes. And then the last thing I need on there for my bucket list is Japan. And I want to see Japan during cherry blossom. And they have a lot of rural walks that you can go to. Much like Hadrian's Wall, I plan to walk in 77 miles along, you know, the top between England and Scotland. But I want to do that next year. And then also Japan has a lot of those rural walks as well through the shrines.
Are you saying that you started with A? You literally have gone through. Oh, okay, you're just on.
No,
when you
these are
said
my last
I, okay, woo!
No.
How much traveling have you
England?
done?
No. A little bit.
All right, so if you only had 3 albums that you could listen to for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
Okay. I've thought about this a little bit. Number one is definitely the Eagles' greatest hits. That would be there.
Now, do you have... See, that's kind of cheating, but I guess I will allow it. You know,
I know. But it's huge. It's got a huge number of songs on there. And so the reason why is I think those were the Eagles broke up right before I got to high school, and all the cover bands we had live bands when I was in high school after football games. Very fun. And so that kind of is the songs that frame my high school experience, is all the Eagles songs. Very fun. And then secondly, I think I would say Let It Be by the Beatles. It's a 2021 mix, right, where they took all the live recordings of them right when they broke up. I don't know if you've seen that. I think it's on Apple TV.
Yes. The rooftop. Yes.
And the great part of that is seeing how much fun they're having. So we should note that at hard times at MJC, there still can be fun. And so I love the creativity of the Beatles, and living in England for a couple of years, definitely that's just part of my being, I think. So I would never get old hearing Ringo Starr giggle, or John Lennon make silly lyrics. That's fun. And then the last one, I'm kind of torn. It would have to be something like Mozart, if it's endless, right? Or I was thinking like George Winston. I love I like piano a lot. So Liz Story, George Winston, where they do winter or autumn. I often listen to that when I'm reading a lot. But those would be. I try to be pretty eclectic. If I could, I would throw in Paul Simon's Graceland.
Oh, that's a good one.
I saw Lady Black Mambaza. When I was in grad school in London, there's a great jazz club called Ronnie Scott's in London, and I saw Lady Black Mambaza live. It was very impressive. So it kind of pulls all my geography together.
Awesome. Well, do you have any parting words of encouragement for us?
I had a good friend of mine when I was in high school who has now died of Lou Gehrig's disease, maybe 52. And I was 15 and he was 18. We had a Spanish class together. And he said to me, "Life's what you make it." And whenever things got bad, I'd think of his words. I'd see them. And that has been true for my life, is whenever I felt stuck, I was fully credentialed. There were no jobs in Modesto. And I had 5 jobs to just live out on my own. And I thought, I'm going to apply to graduate school and go to England, And so it's what you make it. And that opened doors and open opportunity. And so anytime I feel really stuck, I go, okay, wait a minute. What do I really want to do? Where do I want to be? And that has been the solution for me. It gives me motivation. It gives me energy. It restores any sense of faith that things can work out and be better. And so that's what I feel is like MJC can be as great as everybody wants it to be. We just all have to get together and make it fun again. And I think we're not the only ones. It's after COVID. Everyone has to come back. And I think we have to come back and recognize that coming back can cause some people anxiety. And so we have to have more about mental health on campus. And I hope we have more supports for students in that way. But even for each other, we just have to recognize that when we work together for 30 years, people ebb and flow. And we can all learn from each other. Younger staff can learn from older staff. The people struggling to make their classes fun after 10 years can try to, figure out new ways to do things and engage new ways. And I think the more creative we can be and let those energies flow, that's kind of my solution to life, is just to follow your bliss, I guess. It's a Joseph Campbell thing from the 80s and 90s. But following your bliss is always the right answer. And that's why I have hope for MJC. I don't think MJC has not gone through a rough patch before. We've been around for 100 years. And I think that they found their way out of it, and we can too, you know.
Well, Cece, thank you so much for being here, for doing the podcast, for taking time out of your busy schedule to allow us a window into your life. And I really appreciate your positivity and everything that you have given and continue to give to the students and to the college. I appreciate it.
Well, Brandon, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for doing this. I think this is a fantastic way for us to all get to know each other and just start celebrating all the great parts of MJC.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, the winds are picking up and the barnacles are collecting on the bow. Time for us to set sail, me hearties. This episode was brought to you by the Globetrotters, not the basketball team. Produced by yours truly. Edited by that annoying alarm clock over there. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Patchy. And music by the Longitude and Latitude Lute Players. Hey, I hope you're having fun. I know I am. And if there's anyone that you would like to hear on the show, let me know. Again, you can reach us at peglegpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, remember to keep your booty close and your sword sharp, lest you find yourself swabbing the deck on the bottom of Davy Jones's locker. Until we meet again.